The penalty mark, just two tiny dots of white paint set in the heart of a massive 7,140 square metre stage. 11 metres may be all that separates a player from the goal line, yet in those suffocating moments alone with the keeper, it can feel like the longest distance in the world. In a matter of seconds, that little circle can unleash everything: crushing responsibility, surging adrenaline, pure joy, or devastating heartbreak. According to modern stats, 76 out of every 100 penalties find the net. But today, we're not here for the 76. We're here for the 24 that ended in tragedy. This is Ball Logue. After a quick pause for those who wish to subscribe and hit like, we dive in. Here are the dreams devoured by the white spot. When a match ended in a draw, the winner used to be decided in one of two ways, either by replaying the game or by something as cruel as a coin toss. That all changed in 1970 when IFAB introduced the penalty shootout. The intention was fairness, to crown a rightful winner, but no one could have foreseen just how much drama this rule would inject into the game for decades to come. And perhaps no moment captures that drama better than the one Roberto Baggio himself once called "the day football broke my heart." Even those who were children back then, or not even born, know this story. Because when we speak of missed penalties, this is the first that comes to mind. Italy, already a three-time world champion in 1934, 1938, and 1982, had to wait until 1982-94 to reach another final. Roberto Baggio had carried his nation on his back, scoring 5 goals from the round of 16 onward, dragging the Azzurri to Pasadena. Against Brazil, the 90 minutes and extra time ended scoreless. Italy's captain Franco Baresi missed their first penalty, though few would remember that. Daniele Massaro failed to beat Taffarel with the fourth kick, just another footnote. Because when Baggio, fresh off his Ballon d'Or in 1993, stepped up for Italy's fifth, Brazil already led 3-2. Even if he scored, survival depended on Brazil missing their final shot. But the world trusted the divine ponytail. Too much, perhaps. When his strike sailed high over the bar, disbelief spread, not just across the fans, but through Baggio himself. Maybe that's why the moment endures. The white spot had, for the first time, shattered the aura of a superstar. David Beckham may have been one of the greatest dead ball specialists the game has ever seen, but penalties were never his domain. Under Sir Alex Ferguson, United's spot kicks were entrusted to Dennis Irwin and later Ruud van Nistelrooy. For England, as long as Alan Shearer wore the shirt, there was never even a debate. But when Shearer bowed out after Euro 2000, he left behind not just the armband, but also the responsibility from 12 yards. That responsibility fell to Beckham. The talent was undeniable, the charisma unmatched, and the international pedigree was there. But Becks still carried the scars of that needless red card at the '98 World Cup, a moment that turned him into England's villain. He needed redemption, and though he began to find it with that immortal free kick against Greece that sent his country to the 2002 World Cup, the curse of the white spot would return in the autumn of 2003, on a cold night in Istanbul. Drawn in the same Euro 2004 qualifying group as Turkey, England had already won 2-0 in Sunderland. The return leg in Kadıköy finished goalless. And yet, only two things would be remembered: that Turkey still couldn't find a goal against England, even at the 10th attempt, and Beckham's penalty ballooned wildly over the bar, followed by his heated exchange with Alpay Özalan. England topped the group and punched their ticket to Euro 2004. But Beckham's ordeal was only beginning. In England's opening match of the tournament against France, with his side leading 1-0, a 73rd minute penalty was awarded. Beckham stepped up, only to fire tamely at Fabian Barthez. Minutes later, Zinedine Zidane struck twice in stoppage time to steal the game. Lesson learned the hard way: if you shoot at the king, you'd better make sure he falls. England survived the group stage and met Portugal in the quarter-finals. After 1-1 in regular time and 2-2 in extra time, penalties would decide it. The first to step forward? Again, Beckham. If he was wearing the armband, he had to shoulder the weight. But almost impossibly, he repeated the exact miss from Istanbul, sky high, miles over the bar. England were out. Beckham never attempted another penalty for the rest of his career. Once again, Istanbul. Once again, a penalty missed. If we were to list the iconic strikers of the 2000s, Andriy Shevchenko would surely be among the first 5 names spoken. The blonde Ukrainian was a relentless machine in front of goal, especially during his golden years with Milan. In 2003, he buried the decisive 5th penalty against Juventus to deliver the Champions League title, and the following year, he was crowned with the Ballon d'Or. 2 years later, Carlo Ancelotti's legendary Milan returned to the grand stage. The Champions League final of 2005, set at Istanbul's Ataturk Olympic Stadium against Liverpool. What followed would become perhaps the most extraordinary final in football history. By halftime, the scoreboard read 3-0 to Milan. The game seemed over, so much so that even Steven Gerrard later admitted he wished the match had ended there. And then came the 15 minutes that no one can truly explain. Those who've watched Space Jam might remember Bugs Bunny handing his teammates a so-called secret drink at halftime that transformed their performance. Rafa Benitez may not have had a magic potion, but his words must have felt like it. Because in the space of just 6 minutes, Liverpool clawed back 3 goals, 3-3. The miracle was on. Extra time brought more drama. Shevchenko squandered a gilt-edged chance that could have sealed it. Now, as the game rolled into penalties, no one carried more weight on their shoulders than him. The momentum, the crowd, everything favoured Liverpool, who were backed by a sea of travelling supporters. After 4 rounds, the Reds led 6-5. Once again, just like in 2003, Shevchenko stepped up to take his team's 5th penalty, but this time the tension was written all over his face. Liverpool keeper Jerzy Dudek added to the chaos with bizarre antics on the line, moves that would later become folklore. Whether it rattled Shiva or not, we'll never know. What we do know is that his shot went straight at the pole. Liverpool weren't just champions. That night in Istanbul, they proved to the world that in football, miracles are real. Another Olympic stadium, this time in Berlin. Another final of high drama, once again with Italy at the centre. But the opponent, this time, was France. And yes, we're talking about the 2006 World Cup final. It was also the last professional match of one of football's most dazzling figures, Zinedine Zidane. What a stage to bow out on. At 35, he was still the brightest star in his team. The perfect ending seemed within reach, to walk away from the game as a world champion. And it started perfectly. Just 7 minutes in, Zidane stepped up to the spot. In a World Cup final, with the eyes of the planet on him, he had the audacity to go for a Panenka. The ball clipped the underside of the bar and went in. Calm, elegance, genius. Zizou at his purest. But that composure wouldn't last. In the 19th minute, Marco Materazzi struck back to level the score, 1-1, and the match dragged on. As extra time began, French coach Raymond Domenech turned to his bench. On came David Trezeguet for Franck Ribéry in the 100th minute. Just minutes later, Thierry Henry was withdrawn for Sylvain Wiltord. Both substitutions would shape the fate of the night. Had Domenech known what was to come, perhaps he'd have chosen differently. Perhaps he'd have left Henry on the pitch. But how could anyone predict what happened next? Who could imagine one of the greatest players in history in the 110th minute of a World Cup final, losing his temper and headbutting an opponent? That's the beauty and the cruelty of football. Its heroes, even when their names are Zinedine Zidane, are still human, and humans make mistakes. Mistakes that ripple through history. The match went to penalties, but without Zidane, without Henry, the weight fell heavier on French shoulders. When Trezeguet stepped up for his turn, his shot smashed against the bar. Italy converted every single one of theirs, and the trophy was theirs. The French may not have blamed him as harshly as Zidane, but still, the thought lingers. Had Trezeguet scored, perhaps Zizou's farewell could have been written as the fairy tale ending, a world champion's final bow. A penalty that truly defined destiny. The 2010 World Cup quarter-final, Uruguay versus Ghana. The Africans had struck first, Sali Muntari unleashing a thunderbolt from distance just before halftime. But Uruguay answered after the break, Diego Forlan bending a free kick past Richard Kingson. 90 minutes ended level. Extra time ticked away. 119 minutes on the clock, and everyone was bracing for penalties when chaos erupted in the Uruguayan box. A scramble, bodies everywhere, and a Ghanaian shot destined for glory. Then, the unthinkable. Luis Suarez, standing on the line, swatted the ball away with his hands, goalkeeper reflexes from a forward. It was a blatant handball, a red card, a penalty. But none of that mattered. The kick would be the final act. Asamoah Gyan stepped up with the hopes of a continent on his shoulders. He struck the crossbar. Agony for Ghana, ecstasy for Uruguay. Luis Suarez was never known for his sportsmanship, but in that moment, can you blame him? A red card in exchange for World Cup semi-final, it's a trade most would make. The shootout that followed was all Uruguay. The momentum, the belief, tilted entirely their way, and Muslera became the hero. The young keeper saved 2 of Ghana's 4 penalties, sending his nation to the last 4. After the match, Suarez was unapologetic. "I won't apologize for it. I handled the ball, yes, but it was the Ghanaian who missed the penalty. That's not my fault." Moscow 2008, the Champions League final at the Luzhniki Stadium. Roman Abramovich's billion-pound Chelsea squaring off against Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United machine. Back then, Cristiano was just 23. In the 26th minute, he defied gravity. Leaping so high he rose above even the crossbar's height and powered United into the lead. More remarkable still, at 40, he's somehow still capable of doing it. But back to the match. Chelsea equalised just before half-time, Frank Lampard slotting home. 1-1. Normal time and extra time couldn't separate them. It would all be decided by penalties. Chelsea's analysts had done their homework. They had studied Edwin van der Sar's tendencies and noticed a pattern. When penalties were struck to his left, his weaker side, they were far more likely to go in. The plan was clear. Aim left, stick to it. And it worked. The Blues buried their first 4, all to Van der Sar's left. United were wobbling. Cristiano himself had missed his attempt, and suddenly the advantage was Chelsea's. Then came the 5th. John Terry, the captain, the chance to win it all. He too followed the plan, low and left. Van der Sar dived the wrong way, but fate had its say. Under the torrential Moscow rain, Terry's standing foot slipped, the ball cannoned off the post, and the dream dissolved. The 6th round passed with no mistakes, still level. But Van der Sar had seen enough. He realised Chelsea would not break their pattern. So, as Nicolas Anelka placed the ball for their 7th, Edwin tried something else. He pointed to his left, daring the Frenchman. The mind game worked. Anelka abandoned the plan, swung right, and Van der Sar was ready. The Dutchman saved. Cristiano was spared. United were champions of Europe once more. The 2011-12 Champions League season will always be remembered as the season of missed penalties. At the very peak of world football stood Spain's 2 giants, Barcelona and Real Madrid. It wasn't just the rivalry between Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo that was heating up, it was also Pep Guardiola against Jose Mourinho, 2 managers who had turned their feud into a spectacle of its own. The year before, Barcelona had swept nearly everything in sight, but in Mourinho's famed 2nd season, Madrid stormed through La Liga, smashing records for goals and points on their way to the title. The balance of power felt perfectly even. The world expected nothing less than a Clasico showdown in the Champions League final to settle, once and for all, who was the best. Both reached the semi-finals with relative ease, but there, each met their wall. Barcelona fell 1-0 at Stamford Bridge, Real 2-1 in Munich. The second legs would decide everything. At Camp Nou, Pep's side, even against 10 men, clawed their way to a 2-1 lead, but they still needed one more goal. In the 49th minute, they earned a penalty, and up stepped Messi. A curious statistic lingered over him. In 7 matches against Chelsea, he had never scored. Did he know? If he did it haunt him? Only he can answer that. What we do know is this: his shot rattled off the crossbar. The 8th match against Chelsea passed without a goal from him, and when Fernando Torres sealed it with a breakaway strike deep in extra time, it was the Blues, not Barcelona, marching to the final. The next day, the spotlight shifted to Madrid. Ronaldo, firing in 2 early goals, put his side 2-0 ahead, erasing the deficit from Munich. But then came Robben. His penalty brought Bayern back, and after 90 minutes, the tie was deadlocked. Extra time solved nothing. Penalties would decide. Madrid faltered. 4 penalties taken, 3 missed, and the most unforgettable of them all, the very first, Ronaldo, or rather, Manuel Neuer. The German keeper denied him. It felt almost poetic, as if Cristiano had whispered to his eternal rival, "If you're not in the final, then neither am I." The dream of a Clasico final slipped away, squandered from the spot. And so, the final was set. Chelsea versus Bayern Munich. On paper, the Germans were the clear favourites. For Chelsea, it had been a turbulent season. They began under André Villas-Boas, Jose Mourinho's former assistant, but ended under caretaker Roberto Di Matteo, limping to a sixth-place finish in the Premier League. Bayern weren't flawless either. Jupp Heynckes' men had been dethroned in the Bundesliga by Klopp's Dortmund, but they looked far more polished, and the final being staged in their very own Allianz Arena was a massive advantage. On the night, the stats told the story. Bayern had the ball, Bayern had the chances. 23 shots to Chelsea's 6, 20 corners to Chelsea's 1. They looked destined to lift the trophy. When Thomas Müller finally broke the deadlock in the 83rd minute, the script seemed complete. But just 5 minutes later, Didier Drogba tore it up, powering home a header to drag Chelsea back from the edge. Extra time beckoned. Barely minutes into the additional 30, fate offered Bayern the perfect chance to reclaim control. Drogba, the hero at one end, clumsily felled Frank Ribery in the box. The referee pointed to the spot. Arjen Robben, Bayern's talisman, stepped up. Normally, he doesn't miss. But on this night, Petr Cech guessed right, stretching low to deny him. Chelsea's fight raged on. Penalties would decide it. Juan Mata missed Chelsea's first, handing Bayern the advantage once again. All they had to do was hold their nerve. But Robben, haunted by his earlier miss, refused to take part in the shootout. And here's the thing, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. If given another chance, Robben surely would have stepped up, regardless of the outcome. But lessons sometimes require painful mistakes. Ivica Olic missed. Then Bastian Schweinsteiger struck the post. Chelsea's dream lived on, and against all odds, in the heart of Munich, Bayern collapsed under their own weight. The white spot had consumed hope once more, yet in truth, it was a seed of growth. A year later, the same Bayern side would return stronger, more ruthless, more mature. And Robben, the man who had shied away, would write his redemption with a last-minute winner to claim the cup. The 2018-19 Champions League was chaos in its purest form. From the round of 16 onward, football fans were treated to some of the most unforgettable matches in recent memory. Manchester United's shock against PSG, Cristiano Ronaldo tormenting Atletico Madrid yet again with his new club, Liverpool's impossible comeback at Anfield to crush Barcelona 4-0, and Ajax's fearless kids toppling giants across Europe. Amid all that drama, of course, there had to be a missed penalty story. It came in the quarter-finals, where two English sides collided, Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester City. Guardiola's team weren't just favourites for the tie, they were favourites for the entire tournament. But Pochettino's Spurs were no pushover. Back then, the away goals rule still applied, making City's trip to London critical. An early away goal could have killed the tie. 13 minutes in, they had their chance. A penalty, and standing over the ball was Sergio Aguero, a striker whose glittering career lacked only one thing, a Champions League crown. Perhaps this was the moment that would change that. But Hugo Lloris had other ideas. He guessed right, saving Aguero's strike. Spurs went on to nick the match in the 78th minute through Heung-min Son, and crucially, without conceding. The second leg at the Etihad became one of the most breathless games in tournament history. 5 goals in the opening 21 minutes. City led 3-2, but still needed more. In the 59th, Aguero struck again to make it 4-2, as if apologising for the miss in London. But in the 73rd, Fernando Llorente silenced the stadium, restoring Tottenham's advantage. Deep into stoppage time, City thought they had found salvation. A last-gasp goal, pandemonium. But then VAR intervened. The decision went up to the screen, and when referee Cüneyt Çakır raised his arm to signal the offside, Guardiola sank to his knees. Broken. For Aguero, and so many in that squad, the trophy would never come. 2 years later, when City lost the final to Chelsea, Sergio stood near the penalty spot as the final whistle blew, tears in his eyes. And you can't help but wonder, was he looking at that patch of grass and remembering the chance he missed back in London 2 years earlier? England and penalties. A story of heartbreak written across decades. It began in 1990, the World Cup, semi-finals against Germany, defeat on penalties. 6 years later, at Euro 96, history repeated itself. Again against Germany, again on penalties. And the final cruel twist? The decisive miss came from none other than Gareth Southgate, the very man who had been tasked with leading the nation from the dugout until his departure in 2024. In France 98, in the infamous match where David Beckham was sent off, England fell to Argentina on penalties. As I told you earlier, Euro 2004 and the 2006 World Cup brought more agony, both times against Portugal, both times from the spot. Euro 2012, quarter-final against Italy, penalties, same ending. And then came the biggest wound of all, Euro 2020. For the first time since their sole triumph in 1966, England looked complete, talented, deep, confident, and with the final set at Wembley, the chants grew louder. It's coming home. Italy stood in their way. Luke Shaw struck early, Leonardo Bonucci equalised, and after 1-1 across 120 minutes, destiny demanded penalties once more. This time, England tried to prepare. Data, analysis, rehearsals. The staff thought of everything, perhaps too much. In the 119th minute, Southgate made a bold choice, bringing on Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho, players barely used all tournament, solely to take penalties. Cold feet, heavy legs, frozen minds. Rashford, the third taker, clipped the post. Sancho, the fourth, was denied by Donnarumma. And then, the cruelest twist of all, Bukayo Saka, just 20 years old, entrusted with the fifth. His effort, too, was saved. The dream dissolved. The trophy didn't come home. It never has. And you can't help but wonder, if penalties had never been invented, if ties were still settled by replays or even coin tosses, as before 1970, would England's cabinet today hold a few more cups?